Hey, that's a cool little intro thing you did. Oh, why thank you, I made it myself. Oh, hey guys, welcome to today's video where we will be talking about what is, in my opinion, a faction in 40k that people should know more about. Or maybe I'm wrong, and a lot of people already know a lot about them, but from what I've seen, the general awareness around these pretty cool warriors is a little bit too low for my liking. Today, we're going to talk about the Sisters of Silence. But before we do, it's shameless YouTuber self-plug time. If you end up enjoying this video, consider leaving a like or a comment or even subscribing to my channel. And if you really liked it and you want to help me out even more, feel free to share this video with your 38 closest friends and work colleagues. Thanks. Now, the Sisters of Silence is already a pretty cool name, very fantasy-esque. But apparently, one name isn't enough. The Sisters of Silence are also known as the Witch Seekers, the Pale Scourge, the Soulless Ones, the Null Maidens, and the Daughters of the Abyss. Like, hey ladies, maybe pick one extremely badass name please. 6 is a little too much. What are you doing? Hunting witches or farming aura? I think that's what the kids say nowadays. And not to nitpick, but it is kind of weird for a group of warriors who can't even talk to have so many different names to call themselves, but I digress. Oh, yeah, they're called the Sisters of Silence because once they complete their training, they take a vow of silence and literally never talk ever again. Neat. Anyways, the Sisters of Silence have a long history of serving the Imperium of Man that dates back all the way to the Great Crusade. Perhaps the most secretive order of all those who served the Emperor, the Sisters of Silence worked as the militant arm of the Divisio Astra Telepathica, later renamed the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. For simplicity's sake, let's just call it the Astra Telepathica. The Astra Telepathica is responsible for finding, recruiting, and training psychically gifted humans from around the galaxy for service within the Imperium. However, most psychers are inherently dangerous, as not every psycher has the ability to control the influence that the warp has on their mind. I want to take some time now to discuss how psychers work in Warhammer, just so we're all clear on why the Sisters of Silence are so important, not only for the Imperium itself, but for all of humanity. As you may or may not know, the warp, immaterium, chaos dimension, whatever name you like to call it, is a very strange place. Time and space do not exist there. And yet ships enter the warp through holes they tear in the fabric of reality so they can fly through it at normal speeds. But since they're in the warp, they fly it faster than light speeds. It makes no sense. But what we can say for certain about the warp is that it is a direct reflection of the consciousness of living entities, the vast majority of which in the galaxy are humans. The warriors of Magnus the Red, the galaxy's second greatest psychic being only behind the Emperor himself, refer to the warp as the Great Ocean, describing it as a continuously changing, constantly fluid entity, which can at times be utterly calm and at times be completely engulfed in raging winds and currents. Like an actual ocean, Magnus's warriors describe shallows and great depths, and they are cautious of the predators that roam the currents of the great ocean, constantly searching for prey. So what is the prey? Literally human souls. There are creatures of the warp who are drawn to human souls, creatures who we have historically labeled as demons. These creatures are constantly on the lookout for souls that they can take advantage of, souls that they can trick into making devious deals, and souls whose physical body can be taken over, what we call possession. This is why psychers are so dangerous. While all normal human beings give off a small light in the vast depths of the warp, psychers' souls shine like lighthouses, drawing in predators from the warp's darkest corners. That is why psychers must be taught how to handle their abilities. Not only to use those powers to aid in the Imperium's fight for survival, but to prepare them to fend off the immaterial creatures of evil who are constantly hunting for them. And why are the Sisters of Silence the women for the job? Well, remember when I said all normal human beings give off some level of light in the warp? The women who are recruited into the Sisters of Silence do not. They are known as nulls or blanks, hence why one of the nicknames for their order is the Null Maidens. A null or a blank is a person who literally has no presence in the warp whatsoever. And how is this possible? The answer to that question can be found in another one of their nicknames, the Soulless Ones. Yes, in Warhammer we all have souls. Well, almost all of us. If you have a soul, you will have that little light that shines in the great depths of the warp. But you're just a normal person, so you're like a little plankton or something. Then a low-level psyker might be a reef shark, a mid-level psyker, a tiger shark, and a high-level psyker, a great white shark. Then you get to someone like Magnus the Red, and he's like a frickin' megalodon, just absolutely blows everyone else out of the water, except for the Emperor, who's like, I don't know, Godzilla. Like big, angry, purple Godzilla. I also just completely made all of that up in an attempt to contextualize psychers, and I have no clue if it made sense, but hopefully it did. Anyways, Gnolls have no souls. Therefore, they have no reflection in the warp because the warp relies on people having souls to keep it going. Does that make sense? I don't know. Literally nobody understands the warp. Now, my point in all of this was to say that not only do the Sisters of Silence search the galaxy looking for and recruiting psychers into various Imperial efforts, but they are also responsible for the jailing and occasional culling of psychers on their mysterious black ships. When a black ship of the Sisterhood appears in orbit above an Imperial planet, there awaits only one fate for the members of the populace who show psychic power or even just psychic potential. They will be captured and stored in the dungeons of the black ships and tested extensively. Many countless psychers have perished under the harsh treatment of the Sisterhood, but those who are strong enough to survive await further, harder testing in the City of Sight on Terra, the headquarters of the Astra Telepathica. One of the most influential Sisters of Silence is Amandera Kendall, Oblivion Knight and commander of the black ship Area Gloris. In the months leading up to the Istvan III atrocity that signaled the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, Kendall was deployed along with many of her fellow sisters to aid the Death Guard Legion in their annihilation of a Xenos ship belonging to an alien race called the Yorgal. Fighting alongside Nathaniel Garrow, the captain of the Death Guard's 7th Company, the Sisters of Silence and the Death Guard would be triumphant, although a mutant psychic Yorgali would taunt Garrow with its dying breath, telling him of the grim, one could even say dark, future it saw for him. It was able to see the future, and it saw the Horus Heresy happening, and it taunted him about it. Which, to be honest, even though it was a big gross mutated alien thingy that deserved to die for even being in the same room as my glorious Captain Garrow, that was a pretty baller move. When the mutant's vision later came true, and Garrow realized that Horus, Fulgrim, and his own Primarch Mortarion, amongst others, had conspired to betray the Emperor, he and about 70 of his fellow Astartes would barely make the jump into the warp, after having engaged in battle with the ships of his traitorous Death Guard brothers. Garrow's ship, called the Eisenstein, was badly damaged in the battle, and its Gellerfield compromised, leaving those aboard exposed to the demonic entities that swam in the vast currents of the warp. After transiting back to real space, having barely survived their daring escape, with the men aboard the Eisenstein having to do battle against terrifying demonic monsters that served the Chaos God Nurgle, Garrow would order the frigate's warp drive to be overloaded and jettisoned, hoping that the massive shockwave reflected in the Immaterium would attract a passing Imperial ship. Garrow's plan, though foolhardy, was successful, and Primarch Rogel Dorn of the Imperial Fists found the Eisenstein, rescuing Garrow and his shipmates, and upon hearing of his brother's treachery, immediately talked a bunch of shit to them, called them liars, and imprisoned them all aboard his ship before transporting them to a prison on Luna. Dorn's reasoning for immediately imprisoning Garrow was that Rogel Dorn is the most stubborn, unrelenting asshole in the entire galaxy. And that's it. That's literally it. That's just it. Fucking Rogel Dorn. Now here's where this ties into the video. I know you were probably wondering that. Garrow and his fellow survivors were taken to the Somnus Citadel, the headquarters of the Sisters of Silence. Amandera Kendall, having fought alongside and developed some sense of mutual respect with Garrow during their eradication of the gross Yorgal aliens, would volunteer to watch over Garrow during his time at the Citadel. When Solon Decius, a Death Guard Astartes who had been wounded and in fact infected with a demonic disease known as Nurgle's Rot during the Eisenstein's daring escape into the warp, finally gave into the horrible pain and discomfort of his infection, his body became corrupted by Nurgle, and Decius became possessed by one of Nurgle's demons, the Lord of the Flies. Kendall would lead her sisters into battle against the remarkably powerful Lord of the Flies, and the fight would eventually end with Garrow delivering the killing blow to Decius's corrupted form. Soon afterwards, Garrow, Kendall, and former Luna Wolf Ayakton Cruz, who had played a massive role in saving Imperial loyalists and helping the Eisenstein flee in the aftermath of the Istvan III atrocity, were approached by Malkador the Sigillite himself, and were tasked with forming a new Imperial organization, one that would comprise of men and women of an inquisitive nature. I wonder what that could be. It was the Inquisition. I do plan on making a full video on the Inquisition, but if you're curious about one of the most interesting orders within the Inquisition, an order that in many ways runs opposite to the Sisters of Silence while simultaneously working right next to them, check out my video on the Grey Knights. Now that we've covered who the Sisters of Silence are and what they're all about, let's look at what they're up to in the 40k era. In the 10,000 standard years from the resolution of the Horus Heresy until Guilliman's revival and return to leading the Imperium, the Sisters' numbers dwindled, their order nearly becoming extinct at multiple points. Those sisters that remained continued to operate their black ships, hunting renegade psychers across the galaxy and snuffing out the lives of those who had lost control of their abilities. Once Guilliman was reinstated as Lord Commander of the Imperium, the Order of the Sisters of Silence were granted a new life, as Guilliman remembered fondly the importance that his father had placed on them during the Great Crusade, and wished to see their order brought to the forefront of the Imperial effort once more. This time in the Indomitus Crusade, as the Imperium fights with all its might against the ruinous powers of chaos. Similar to the Astartes, who began as 20 legions and now consist of over 1,000 autonomous chapters, the Sisters of Silence have become more autonomous and self-reliant in the multiple millennia since the heresy. They now comprise numerous new orders, with each order holding its own unique specialty, such as infiltrating the tunnels of the Webway to do battle with psychic Xenos races, neutralizing special attacks in strategic locations across the galaxy, and perhaps the most important of all, continuing to beat the ever-loving shit out of crazy psychic people who step out of line. Take that, psychic people. Having recently restored the Somnus Citadel to its pre-heresy glory and re-established it as their base of operations, the Sisters of Silence are poised to play a massive role in the Indomitus Crusade and the future of the Imperium of Mankind. And with that, thanks for watching. If you made it to the end of the video, I hope that means you liked it. And if you did, leaving a like, a comment, or even subscribing helps me out big time. And of course, let me know what you want to see next. See ya!